Hello, everyone. Welcome to our National Citizenship Services Day virtual event hosted by PALCUS. We are really happy to have you all with us today because we get lots and lots of questions about the citizenship process, and we will be addressing some very specific topics today that hopefully speak to a lot of the questions that we get. Presenters today are Sabrina Broom from Portugal Solutions, Monique Kelly Valence from Marie B. Kelly and Associates, and Nelson Ponta from Becoming a Portuguese Citizen, and Sandra Carapinha from Learn European Portuguese Online. They will be addressing not only certain paths to citizenship, but also Sandra will be talking about the CIPL language test, which is the requirement for getting citizenship through grandparents. We'll just answer some of the general questions that we have. And we will start with, is the process different to get citizenship for a minor whose parent is a Portuguese citizen? Is there any benefit to getting it done before they turn 18, or does it not make a difference?
Yeah, it's free. So
Yeah.
that's the biggest.
Oh, it's free to do it as a
free.
minor.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good, that's for a good reason for sure. Okay.
Process is
Awesome.
basically the same, but it's free.
Okay, awesome. Let's see. I think this might be a different one. I started my family process, kids and husband, even though the husband has a Portuguese he's Portuguese born in Angola, but somehow never got registered as a Portuguese citizen. They started the process, but since right before COVID, and they're still waiting for citizenship. Would that be normal? So that was 3 years ago. You should be coming up on the end, right? Right? Like you should have seen some movement in the tracking.
It depends on the specifics of the case. Nelson, Monique, I don't know if you guys want to chime in. You want to make sure that the father is actually a Portuguese citizen. There's a big misconception that people who were born in Angola, Cabo Verde, Guinea-Bissau, that because they were born in those countries, that they're Portuguese citizens because when they left, they had Portuguese passports. They have documents with the República Portuguesa on it. That may not be the case once the revolution happened and once the war was done. You had to choose if you wanted to be Portuguese or if you wanted to be a national of the newly established countries. So that's the first thing. But it also depends on how you submitted the application.
Okay.
What we're finding a lot too with people who are taking this long is that a lot of times they come to us and they're like, hey, we don't know what's going on. We've been waiting for 3 years. And then we'll call Registro Centrais in Lisbon and they'll say, oh, well, a year ago we mailed them or we emailed them something saying that this document was wrong or we needed this or this and that, and we never got that. So that happens a lot. So I would
And then they have to start all over again.
No, well, it depends. But if it's something, a lot of times you can just, send it in, but it's probably better to call and find out what's holding up the case.
And yeah, so in my case, had my husband not gone to the I always mispronounce the name, the Regis Civil, right? And stood in line and checked, the guy literally said, well, it's a good thing you're here because tomorrow we were going to send her a note saying your process has been ended and you need to start over again. So yeah, so that definitely can happen. So check your spam email and make sure that you've written your email correctly on the application so that you get the notification.
That one, Angela. Let me just add one thing because we just recently had some clients with from the PALOP, right? So all the countries that were former colonies. This, by the way, applies to all, Mozambique, Angola, Cabo Verde, and others. And we have a few cases from Idaho. So there's a community in Idaho that left from California, and a lot of them are descendants of Angola. The chamados retornados, so they left after that time of the war. And there is one thing that wasn't clear, and it's still, because some things, I think Monique and Sabrina would agree, is there's the rules and what's supposed to be, But then there's some areas where there's interpretations depending on the conservatoria that you go. There are some are more flexible, some are not. Some things are mandatory, and other things it really depends where you go and and the mood of the day. So on that, what I've learned is that with Angola, when you're registering, we have many clients that they're on a tough situation because they left Angola, so they don't have citizenship from Angola. So they were born in they live now in America, but they don't have a birth certificate. So they basically don't have a birth certificate.
Oh my God.
They can't get a birth certificate because they live in America now and they're American citizens, because under the Refugee Act or marriage or whatever way, they are now legally American citizens, but they were not born in America, so they don't have a birth certificate. But they were also not born in Portugal. They're seeking Portuguese citizenship, but they were born in Angola. But when they were born in Angola, they were not given a birth certificate, and they can't get it. So basically, they can't get the Portuguese citizenship, because the first thing you'll need for this whole topic we're talking about of citizenship, it's the birth certificate plus the million stamps of apostilles, or depending on the country. Canada, by the way, Canada is going to have the apostille system soon, thank God. So we don't need to go to the consulates to recognize that document. And that makes it easier because usually the American institutions, it's way faster to get those things. To wrap up on Angola, what we're trying to do right now is we're trying to register those people that were born in Angola when Angola was a former Portuguese colony. It can't be after. Okay, it has to be when it was a Portuguese colony. If they were born there, look for things that you have. If you have the birth certificate, awesome. If you don't have it, if you have baptism or other things, because our clients didn't have a birth certificate, they have to go find it, look for it. So once you have it, you need a whole other bunch. We were very happy. We thought that once you have the birth certificate, we were ready to go. But then you need a whole bunch of other verifications in Angola. So in the case of Angola, it needs to be stamped. It actually gets like this little, it's like a stamp, like a seal, but it's a loose thing that they actually tape on the paper with the tape. So you get that, and then you get something else. It also needs to get verified by the equivalent of Ministério dos Negócios Estrangeiros de Angola. So it needs to go to two different places. Okay, so, but to finalize, what we're trying to do is to try to have it not go directly to the Conservatório de Registro Central as a new citizenship, but just automatically be recognized as a simples nascimento on any registro civil. But that's the area where it's shady, and it's it might works on some cases, and others it doesn't.
Okay, thank you. So our next question, I believe it's for Sandra. So if you take the Portuguese A1 and A2 classes in Portugal and pass, then I understand you do not have to take the language test at all. Is that correct?
Well, sorry. Well, the thing is, there's not really an alternative for those. So let me explain. For example, for those foreigners that are moving to Portugal with the golden visa or D7, the government in Portugal offers in many cases these free courses that take the 150 hours. You have to do them in person, and at the end you take a test and you get a certificate. However, for someone that is not a resident of Portugal or that does not have Portuguese citizenship, they can't take those courses in Portugal because they're too long. They're over 3 months, and legally you can only be in Portugal for 3 months. So these courses are not an option. And even from my knowledge, university, you go to a university in Portugal, you take an A1 semester and then an A2 semester. They're not accepted in the process because you need to have 150 hours. So the CIPL, the advantage of the CIPL is that you can really study at your pace. you're not limited by a timeline, in the sense that you can study for a year or two and you take it when you want. And also the big advantage of the CIPL is that the certificate is valid for life. While a lot of other courses that people are taking, the language test is only valid for 2 years. And a lot of people don't know that. So if you take the CIPL today, but you only want to take care of your documents in 5 years,
that's good to know.
Will always be valid. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's really good to know, because if you know that you're going to have a lot of other documentation to figure out later on anyway, you could work on the CIPL, like work on that now, and then just that's done. And that's
exactly.
good to know.
Just get it out of your way. Yeah, that's what I recommend.
Yeah. Okay. Another one about grandparents. I think we may have answered this one already, but if I'm obtaining citizenship through grandparents, not my parents, do I still need to register my parents' marriage and divorce?
According to the application, no, but just like we said a little while ago, it's going to depend on the Registro Civil. It's going to depend on the Conservatoria. Sometimes it gets rejected, sometimes it doesn't.
Kind of related to that, how do you prove that this person is your grandparent?
Well, that's something I was going to bring up, was that it depends on your age too, because if your father didn't sign your birth certificate, then you have to register your parents' marriage, or else they won't register. If it's through your father's line, you have to register the marriage. So we're finding that with people born in the 60s and 70s, they never used to require the father to sign the birth certificate.
Only the mother. That's interesting.
Only the mother.
So weird. Okay. And we did have another question about if your grandparents are deceased, can you still apply through them? Yes, you just need to get the documentation, right? So because the grandparent doesn't have to be physically in person anywhere, you just need all of their documentation. Got it. Okay. Next one, if applying for citizenship through grandparents and grandfather was born in Portugal but married in the USA, does my grandparents' marriage need to be registered?
It'd be the best thing.
It would be the best thing.
It's people want to like skip out on certain steps, and I get it, because there's so many things to do, so many documents you have to pull, and they're just like, if I could just like cut some corners here. But honestly, you're just better off just following the process and just doing what needs to be done. It's so much easier.
According to the application, no, but like we always recommend getting all the marriages registered. We also recommend getting all the translations done in Portuguese. Send all your documents in Portuguese. Again, not required according to the application. They say it's not necessary, but you're going to get to step 4, and they're going to nickel and dime you for every little thing.
Well, not only that, hate to say it, but final approval of applications is kind of subjective, right? Like if the person reviewing it is having a really bad day and they don't like foreigners, you may get rejected because of that. And, not that that's right at all, but that has happened, right? So to your point, Sabrina, that if they get an application and it's in Portuguese and, everything is in Portuguese, it's easier for them to understand. And that may diffuse any bad feelings they're having that day, because they appreciate the effort that was gone through.
And you avoid mistranslations. Like I heard of a case where a guy was applying for his citizenship in Brazil, and he had previously been arrested for arson or something. And whoever translated the document put that he had been arrested for terrorism, so he denied it.
Oh, Jesus.
So you want to make sure that somebody knows what they're doing is translating it. And sometimes in Portugal, sometimes the words get, misinterpreted. So better to do it here in the US, I think.
I did see a question about translation. So can anybody translate it? Anybody translate all your documents? Or let's say, for example, you actually are fluent, literate in Portuguese and you can write. Is that, or does like a kind of an official translator have to do it? And then do you have to get the translated versions stamped or apostilled or anything like that?
They should be notarized, and then you should get the notarized version of the translation apostilles. But it doesn't have to be like a certified translator to do it. Just like Monique is saying, make sure it's somebody that knows what they're writing, perhaps.
Got it. Got it.
Problem.
Okay. Is there any benefit to getting a D7 while we wait for the citizenship process?
Getting a what?
Unless they want to live in Portugal more than 3 months, I wouldn't say,
So they're asking if, while you're waiting the 3 years to get approved for citizenship, should you go ahead and apply for a D7 visa? And to Nelson, that's a good point. Like, unless you need to stay in Portugal for longer than 3 months for any particular reason, then, So I guess if you're wanting to go live and work there, and you know that you eventually want to become a citizen, but you want to go now, then then maybe getting the D7 would work. Okay. Another one was, I started the process for both my kids 10 years ago, one for citizenship, one got her citizenship, and the other one shows open in Lisbon. She went to the San Francisco consulate and they show it as closed, like the application was closed out. So what does she do now?
I would contact Lisbon and find out what's going on, because one thing we discovered just recently is that if you start your citizenship process through the consulate, you don't get, it's not the same as if you do it directly through Portugal. And so they don't give you a number where you can check on the case. It's not as easy to check on the case as it is through there. So I would just see if they can email Lisbon. There's an email address you can email them and find out.
Okay.
And in some instances, as you know, sometimes, unfortunately, also documents get lost. And we've had cases of clients that had to file again. And it's like, how come I need to file again? Well, you need to file again because they don't, there's some cases where they can't find it. Like the consulate will have registered that they sent it, proof that they sent it out. But then in Lisbon, they say they never got it. So.
Does the A2 test count as connection to the Portuguese community, or should other documents be submitted? Now, to confirm, the A2 test may or may not be the CIPL test, right? That the CIPL test is a very specific test, and it's called the CIPL test. I just want to make sure that we're using terminology correctly.
I don't know if it's through parents or through grandparents. Of course, I think it's also valid to say that if you're interested in learning the language, for personal reasons, and you're still doing your citizenship through your parents, you can still take the CIPL and add it to the file, I'm assuming anyway, because it also proves that you're learning the language. But since you don't have to take that exam, you can just, I've written letters of students that are just taking classes with me, or you can ask your local school, or, so you can always, that helps prove, I believe, also your connection.
Okay. I guess if they were applying through the spouse and wanted to demonstrate that they had such an interest that they took classes and took the A2 test, I guess that could do it.
I've had a student that actually, it was when they changed the law, because initially spouses had to take the CIPL exam too, and she took it anyway, so she has it also. So yes, but you can just ask your teacher or your school if you're taking languages to the language, just having regular classes, you can just ask for it.
Right. I would still recommend becoming a PALCUS member, because then we can give you a letter saying that you have a connection. So next, to confirm, the parents' marriage divorce will still have to be registered in Portugal for a minor trying to get citizenship through a parent, correct?
At least the marriage, yes. That's when,
and
if they're married.
Yeah. And when we did it for our daughter, both of us had to be present at the consulate to sign the paperwork for our daughter. So I think that's another point. So that if you are divorced, right, and you're trying to get citizenship,
even if you're going to have somebody else submit it for you, you're not submitting it to the consulate yourself. At least what I do, and I'm sure Monique, you do the same exact thing. If I'm doing a citizenship for a minor, both parents have to sign off on that procuração, so that someone. And same thing as like when you're getting an American passport, right? You want to make sure that both parents are on the same page when you've got, a kid under the age of 18.
Yep.
Okay. Let's see. I'm just kind of going through the questions to see which ones we haven't answered yet. Is it true that if you are married for more than 6 years, the connection to the community part is not needed? I saw this on the New Bedford Consulate's website.
No, the New Bedford Consulate doesn't have anything updated. We'll start there. But no, you should always have some kind of connection to the Portuguese community. We tell clients, if you have nothing else, at the very least, write a letter as to why you want to be Portuguese. Again, there's no like real anything that's written that determines what the connection to the Portuguese community is. Just to save yourself some trouble down the line, write a letter. If odds are, if you're looking at the New Bedford Consulate's website, you're in the Massachusetts area, you've been to at least a festa, just write about it,
Yeah, right. A couple of pictures.
Yeah. So when I applied, someone recommended getting like letters of recommendation, right? So if somebody that in the community, is like, oh yes, this person has attended many events and things like that.
Yeah, and Sabrina, you brought up a really good point that these laws change all the time. What they accept today, they may not accept tomorrow. And the consulates can't keep up with the ever-changing laws. So if you happen to be looking on the consulate website, you might have outdated information. So it's really good to get some kind of, advice.
Or just be emailing or asking the questions, right? Is this still the case?
Right.
Yeah.
Or if you read Portuguese, go straight to the Citizenship, have their own website. You can look there. But yeah, it changes all the time. It's frustrating.
And it's probably one of the easiest things to establish, because you could do it with trips. We have a client, we go through the list. Well, do you own any property in Portugal? That's a way kind of to establish a connection to Portugal. If you have property, you have an interest in the country, and no. Have you visited Portugal? No. But that's usually another way that you could do. If you have the tickets, the airline, kind of the online stuff, just printing it out, having stuff like, well, I'm so interested in Portugal and connected that I've traveled back and forth. So you could do that. So if that's not the case, then have you gone to any Portuguese festas or connected? If you have, write about that. No. If no, you go. There's many ways many options you have to do that. So if that's the last resource too, that I would say that is a good way to show connection and interest, is to be part of an organization like
that. Does the FBI criminal record background check require an apostille? And we kind of covered that already, that it does not, because it comes sealed. Or from the U.S. Department of State, or can it be an apostille of a true and attested copy by a state secretary of state? I don't know if I understand that question fully, but I think essentially
probably thinking like a certified, like making a photocopy and having like a notary or something say it's a true certified copy. That's not a good idea. Again, we don't even know sometimes if Portugal's going to accept it or not with the apostille, without the apostille. If it's going to be out of date after 2 years of them sitting on it. It's
technically that's one thing also that changed a lot, and it depends on the country, because some people are, well, how come? Because in Canada, for example, in America, supposedly, and that's one thing that changed, and that was confusing. Even the registro civils, we would get there with the right documents and with the right knowledge of the law, and some of the workers would not accept some things or would deny that information because they had changed so recently. So, for example, up to recently, the documents were recognized by the consulate, like major American documents, procurações and things like that. Now, the consulates don't recognize those anymore. it needs to be an apostille, because there's a law that says that that's why this is tying up back to the FBI report. So on that, I'm more of the opinion that if they say the law says that every single American document needs to have an apostille to be recognized in Portugal. So that would also apply to the FBI report. Right?
Yeah. Okay. Next question. If parents were never married, is there another process for children to apply for citizenship? I would say they would just apply through the parent that's a citizen, right? And ideally, they won't be a minor, because if they are a minor, then they would need both parents' signature, and that could get complicated if they're not married, right? So yes, you just use the one parent that's a citizen.
You do still need, if there's two parents though on your birth certificate, you still need the other parent's birth certificate though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So even if you're applying just through one parent, you still need the other person's information. It's just there's not going to be a marriage certificate because there never was one.
And do both parents' birth certificates need to be registered in Portugal? They're birth registered in Portugal? So for example, let's say this person's parents were never married. One is a Portuguese citizen, one is not. Do they need the non-Portuguese person to register their birth in Portugal, or they just need the US birth certificate apostille just to show this is my parent?
Right. They just need the,
okay.
That's all.
Got it. Okay. Are there any steps that can be performed by an honorary consulate? As far as I know, no, right? Not for applying for the citizenship process. It's if you need to pick up a renewed passport or citizenship card when they have those permanencia consulares appointments. I think you can do that, but I think that's it.
The main time where the honorary consulates kind of work as an extension of the consulate and work well is when they have precisely those permanencias consulares. So what they do is they take that machine that is official from the government to that to a hall, usually in San Diego. In the case of California, for example, San Diego, they do the hall, the Portuguese Hall, they do the Artesia Hall, they do the Valley, and I believe in Turlock, they do it in Turlock. And then in the East Coast, I don't know how the permanencias are working at this point, but there's so many consulates in the East Coast that you almost don't need it. In California, we're just so vast. And then also the consulate's been doing they did some other states, because the consulate in San Francisco represents more than 13 states. You know, you have a vast area that is equivalent from Lisbon to Russia. So they have to do these different areas to do those. So really the only thing that the honorary consulates could do at that point, besides building a connection with a consulate and kind of trying to, you know, bring the person and the consulate together if they're having problems or misunderstandings or don't know the email or a way to contact, is those permanencia consulares. So when we get clients that obtain the citizenship, then we usually help them out with a process, and then they're like, okay, now what? And how do I get my ID? How do I get my passport? So usually at that point, the permanencias, if there's room, because usually they can only take like 20, 30 per session, and they only do usually one session, and they fill up pretty quick, it avoids you having to go to the consulate. So you could do it there.
Got it.
But they don't do anything on the citizenship process. They would only do once you're a citizen already.
Right. So I've heard things about a new online system, and this question actually says, is the new AI system making it quicker? I don't know if there's been a development and there's now an AI system that helps facilitate things. I don't know.
Well, I saw that question, and I messaged the lawyer that I mentioned recently, Nelson Perez, that has been working on this forever, and congratulate him, because the president of Portugal, President Marcelo, is now on the East Coast, visiting the East Coast, and they were attending an event, and he always tells me no comment. So because it needs to be accessed, that platform, in order to be used, needs to be accessed by a lawyer. So it can't be that platform. I don't know if we're talking about the same one, right? There's the link you sent me earlier, and there was a question about with somebody that was wondering if this online way of submitting it was if we were able to do that. It has to go to a lawyer, and we usually work as Sabrina and Monique. We have lawyers that we work with and we recommend, and we could tie you up with that. The thing is that I think most lawyers, at least a couple that I checked, they're still very apprehensive on this system and on this procedure. I really want it to work, and I'm always checking on it and because I can't wait to a time where you could submit the citizenship form online and kind of just then mail the documents as supporting evidence. But so far, it's not something the lawyers are using much.
Okay.
Also, there's not too much that's going to speed up the process. I'm going to reiterate it. You know, everything in Portugal it's a lot slower. It's a lot more relaxed. And unfortunately, they don't have the manpower to process all of these citizenships. They don't have as many people working on these things. So people ask all the time, is there a way to expedite the process? No. Unfortunately, it's going to take as long as it's going to take.
Right.
Yeah. On that, Angela, if you allow me, one of the things that I was hoping was that once they get this online system working, whoever will submit online would kind of have, let's say, a preference on the sense that maybe they would have somebody designated just for those cases, or we're still figuring out how that's going to work. So we're paying close attention to that. And on continuing on the line of Sabrina, this is a great opportunity to clarify something that people, actually, it's one of the taglines we have, your framework to an expedited path to dual citizenship. She's right. There's no way you could pay extra to expedite something. You don't pay like a passport in America or even in Portugal. You could pay extra to expedite the service. You don't have that. What you could do to expedite the service is a series of steps on the preparation on how you gather your documents, because on that phase of document gathering, some people take 1 year, 2 years. For example, registering your marriage. You could register your marriage in a day, 2, 3, a month, 2 years, 3 years, depending how you do it and where you go. So that's kind of a way of expediting it if you do the right thing with the right tip. Is there a way to pay extra to expedite? No. Is there a way to make it faster if you know the tips and the secrets almost to these things throughout webinars and these things? Yes. Another way you could, there's many tips to expedite, like the ladies mentioned before. The translations, not mandatory, but very helpful. Imagine it sits on the desk of somebody that doesn't know English or likes English. It goes on the pile of do it later next year. So there's all these little things that could help you expedite the process and make it faster.
The gather, like you said, expedite your preparation, but once you've sent it off, it's just a waiting game.
Yeah. Once it's there, there's no way to pay more to get it faster. No.
Right.
No, there's an expedited fee on that sense. They're just the only thing at that point, once it's there, if you have somebody that helps you, if you have a team, if you have somebody, a procurator doing it for you, the advantage is if you have somebody knocking at the door or calling or emailing or kind of putting some pressure, at least you know on one end if there's something missing. Okay, if it's stuck, because like in your case, Angela, for years, it was stuck there because they needed something, but they never told you they needed something. So if you're in contact with them, you will know. So it won't be stuck there for a year or two. Because something is missing, because then many times they don't tell you. And also because once you put some pressure on, and when you start asking, say, hey, the deadline is kind of gone, these people need it, it's always helpful. Pressure always helps.
Right. Next question. Can the language requirement be met by taking some recognized courses rather than the simple test? And if so, is there a list of recognized courses? I think no, right?
No. There's not, no.
Yeah.
Especially like I was saying, if you're not in Portugal, right? There's no online course you can take, meaning, you know, you have to watch these videos and they'll ask you questions. No. But I also want to say, don't be afraid of the SIPL. Sometimes I feel like people, oh, I'm trying to find ways to avoid the SIPL.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can always retake it, as I was saying. So, you know, it's nothing to be scared about. I like to say it's not an easy exam. It's just really important to be informed and trying to do it. So again, if you don't have options, you know, in the US and the dates you want, you can fly to Portugal. But by the way, those international dates, I didn't mention that, but those international dates, you can, you know, take them in other countries, in Canada, in Mexico, in Italy, in Spain, in France. This is an exam that is taken, I won't say in all countries of the world, but you can go on the CAPL website and it's taken in most countries. So just be aware of that May date and the November date. You can take it in other places. So if you're, you know, going on vacation to Italy, you can take the SIPL.
Yeah. All right.
You know, so yeah, there are not a lot of alternatives to the SIPL. And that's why I recommend, because I've had students move to Portugal, and they enroll in a little local school. They do a A1 or A2 course in that local school. The school gives them a little paper at the end saying, oh, here's the certificate. That certificate is not valid. So you want to make sure that the document you're presenting is a valid, certified document, you know, recognized. So the SIPL is the one that's most recognized, and like I was saying, valid for life. So you don't have to worry about, is it 2 years old? Do I have to go back to taking a new one? So I highly recommend just taking the exam. Yes.
Okay. So we have a couple of questions about power of attorney, and I'll read both questions and maybe we can address both. So my husband's application is through a grandparent, but his father is still alive, but he's ill. Her husband has power of attorney for his father. So can he apply for his father's citizenship using his power of attorney? And is that route worth pursuing? And the similar question was, can you apply for a parent through use of a power of attorney? So I guess the same thing. Can the child apply for a parent's, help the parent get citizenship if the child has power of attorney for the parent?
Well, the danger of applying for someone that is ill is if they pass away mid-process, you know, that could be a problem. So
because then it just closes, right? Then you can't move forward. Okay.
Yeah.
But if they're not ill and they're healthy, but for whatever reason the child has power of attorney.
Depends on if they're talking about an American power of attorney. No, because American power of attorney cannot be used in Portugal for just about anything. A procuração, like Monique explained very well in her presentation, a procuração is not necessarily the exact same thing as a power of attorney. So if people think I have a POA over my dad so I can sign for him, even if they're doing a procuração for something in Portugal, it's not going to be the case.
Yeah. I mean, there are ways around it. There, like as I explained in my thing, they have travel notaries that will come to your house. And we've had people who they have parents in, you know, a home, and they can't they can't leave, so the notary will go to them, and you can get apostille with a notary stamp. So that's one way of doing it. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend trying to do that either. I mean, I wouldn't recommend trying with the power of attorney.
Right. Okay. So, and we are at time, but if everyone can stay on for a couple more minutes, we could try and answer a couple more questions. But we understand if you do have to, you know, it is still a work day today and we do have schedules, but we do have a couple of more questions. If applying through parents as a divorced person here in the USA, do they have to register their marriage divorce? So I'm not sure if they're asking if the parents have to register their marriage and divorce, or if the divorced person has to register marriage divorce. So yeah, maybe we can skip, actually, maybe we'll skip that one and
Well,
try and get
Sabrina
some
kind of,
clarification. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say Sabrina touched on that really well in her presentation. I mean, if they're talking referring to their parents, they have to at least do the marriage. They should at least do the marriage. But if they're okay with staying married, then they don't have to necessarily do the divorce. But then, of course, you get complications if you have inheritances and things like that, and that could cause a
Okay.
problem.
So so I'm a divorced person. I'm not, but I'm saying hypothetically, if I'm a divorced person and I'm applying for citizenship through my parents, do I have to register my marriage and divorce in Portugal for the citizenship application?
For your specific citizenship application, no.
No.
Because
Okay.
you get registered as a Portuguese citizen, you're registered as
An
exactly
individual.
what appears on your birth certificate. So you're going to go with your maiden name, right? If eventually you have children that are going to want to apply through you, that's where your marriage and your divorce is going to come into play.
Got
Also,
it.
to remember to not register second marriages and not registering the first one, because that happens a lot and you can have a lot more of a headache than it's worth. Sometimes people will, they were married, divorced, and then remarried, and they want to forget their first marriage and just register the second one. That can cause a whole lot of problems. If you are able to do it, most of the times the consulates or the Registro Civil or Conservatório is going to catch it because it'll say second marriage, but I never recommend anybody doing that, because if you have a child from a first marriage and you totally ignored that whole route, it can be more of a headache than it's worth.
We had a couple of people ask this, like, how long, so if I become a citizen, how long before my child can apply, or how long before my husband can apply, or something like that? And I think it's immediately, right? As soon as you are approved, ideally you will have already started gathering all the documentation for the next person. The one thing that you need from the person you were applying under is a copy of their card, their citizenship card, right? So,
or their birth certificate, ideally.
Oh, so you can use the Portuguese birth certificate and not wait for the card.
Yeah, it's better to use a certificate anyway, because then it shows whether or not you're married, if you're single, it has all of your information on there.
Got it. So essentially, let's say, again, I got my Portuguese citizenship but I'm still waiting for my card, but my child can go ahead and submit an application just using my Portuguese birth certificate, like right away. So almost like maybe even before I get approved for citizenship. Oh no, you'd have to wait, right? Because you can't use
part of the packet. They would need your birth certificate as part of the packet.
Got it. Okay. All right, cool. Well, that's good to know. And we'll make this the last question, and then I just have a few closing slides, and we'll move on. But then all the questions that didn't get answered, we'll actually put all of those in a document and try and get them online. So, or actually reach out to you. And we had a couple of people ask, like, how do we get in touch with Sabrina or Monique or Nelson? And so we will, and Sandra as well. And so we'll put everybody's website and your email, contact information there so that everybody knows how to get in touch with you. So last question, is there a way to verify the progress of a citizenship application? I applied last year, both my parents are Azorean, and was given an ETA of March 2023 by the San Francisco consulate. I would like to start the process for my children and spouse as well, but was advised to wait until my Portuguese passport was approved. So I guess per our last question, they don't need to wait for that, right? They just need the birth certificate that's registered in Portugal.
Depends on, but the tracking part of it, it depends on how they submitted it. So if you submit through the consulate, you have to understand that there is no tracking code that they're going to provide you. It's all by just communicating back and forth with the consulate, which is the difficult part of getting through the consulate. If you are going to submit it directly to Lisbon, it is going to take longer. There's a couple more things that you're going to need, but there is going to be an always updated tracking code So if you submitted it through the consulate and you're aggravated that they're not responding to you via email, best wishes. There's no other way to check on it.
Yeah. So, and that's
Yeah.
actually a good question. I know that when you're applying through marriage or through a grandparent, you have to send it direct to Lisbon. If you're applying through a parent, can you send it direct to Lisbon?
Yeah, you still can.
You still can? Okay.
Yeah.
I think
You can send it to another place other than the black hole, right? The Conservatório dos Registros Centrais, so which makes it faster. The thing that is new also, that is an update, is we used to promise our clients a case number, and it's something we would also usually we advocated. You should ask for a case number, get a case number, because you go online and you check the process. But we had to stop promising the case numbers, because now the conservatórios other than the Registros Centrais, which is where we like to file everything other than grandparents and spouses to make it faster, because Centrais is really busy. It's where everybody sends everything. So we find another place that is faster. It's like finding the faster DMV, right? But the faster DMV, now we used to give case numbers, and now not all of them guarantee case number. It's things that change. When we started doing this, everybody would give case numbers pretty much except the consulates, I believe. Now only the conservatórios give case numbers, and there's cases of clients that came to us because they've been waiting forever and they gave up waiting and they wanted to start again. And they never got the case number, even from the Central. So do you get a case number? Maybe, sometimes. Some places we know we don't. Sometimes some places you might get a case number. The case number is very useful because you go online and you could check the process of the steps where it's at.
So again, for those who asked about contacting our folks on the webinar today, if you actually go to the PALCUS website and go up to the top, resources, consular, you will actually see that they are listed here. We're still adding Nelson's information here. Website updates tend to be a little slow, but again, we will send out information to contact him as well. We also have some of the Q&As that we do on these webinars. We've actually written them out on our website, and so the ones from today will be added eventually, so you can always go find them there. And then, as we talked about before, that being a PALCUS member can actually really help your citizenship process. So if you're looking to take the SIPL test, you can practice your Portuguese during our language conversation groups. And if you are applying through a spouse, you can use our membership as a way to show connection to the community. And there's just some other benefits to being a member. And very easy. You go to our website, click on Become a Member, and signing up takes 5 minutes. And membership starts at $50 for the year, so quite affordable. There you go. And with that, say obrigado. For me, obrigada. So thank you so much to our panelists. It's like such great information. I think things that we haven't really covered in detail in the past, that we get lots of questions for. I know this is not going to be the last webinar that we have. So thank you all so much for your time. Really, really valuable. And thank you to all those who joined us either on Zoom or on Facebook. And if you have any questions, please reach out to us, reach out to our panelists, and good luck with your citizenship process application. Just stick with it. Eventually it will happen. And with that, we'll say have a wonderful weekend, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks so much. Obrigada.